Hello everybody, Mannix here. Got another knife review for you right here, right now. But first, feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos. This is going to be a review on a knife that I have reviewed a long time ago, but years have passed, we got better video and audio quality going here, better lighting, etc. So I figured it was finally time to revisit this sucker, one of my favorites of all time, the Cold Steel Espada Large. This one happens to be sort of the premium version, the S35VN blade steel we have on here, satin finish, as opposed to the current AUS 10A blade steel with the stonewash finish and the G10 handle scales on the current model G10 Espadas, as of early 2024 anyway. This one also has G10 on it, but it's a much different texture. It's much more smooth. Then we have aluminum bolsters right here. Overall construction, shape, and ergonomics are very similar to the G10 version of the Espada Large, but we have a handful of little differences here and there, especially the blade seal. That's the big one. S35VN is a pretty massive jump from AUS 10A. Granted, it's going to be a bit more brittle, but it's a lot more valuable, it's more expensive, and it just holds its edge for much longer. Excellent blade steel. Love S35VN. But let's just get the specs out of the way real quick. Overall length of 12.25 inches. The blade length is 5.5 inches with a cutting edge of 5.25 inches. Handle length 7.25 inches. Satin finish, hollow grind. Again, S35VN blade steel on here. Trailing point, some would call that maybe a clip point, whatever. Weighs 9.8 ounces. Ambidextrous thumb plate, some may call that a thumb disc. Triad locking mechanism, which is also ambidextrous. Tip up right hand carry only, not ambidextrous on the premium Espada. It is on the G10 version, not this guy. It's tip up right hand only. Retails at $494.95 US dollars, just under 500 bucks, but you can get this for around like $240, $250. I've seen the prices jump all over the place throughout the months and years, but as of early 2024, that's about what I'm seeing. Like I always like to do, let's just weigh this sucker for craps and giggles. They're saying it's 9.8 ounces, but in almost every single case, they're wrong about the weight, but maybe my scale's wrong. I don't know. 9.83. Okay, so we're very close there. It's basically 9.8 ounces, just under 10. So we have aluminum frames on here with the G10 handle scales. Very solid construction. Very strong because of that triad locking mechanism as well. Not super heavy, actually. It's only just barely heavier than the G10 version of this knife, surprisingly. G10 is shockingly dense. It's certainly not going to be nearly as grippy as the G10 Espada. I would not recommend this one more for tactical use, although you certainly could. It's a bit slick. Very nice and beveled, rounded edges, very smooth, very comfortable. You can go into this grip all the way down here for maximum reach, very comfortable. You can scooch up here into what I would call the standard grip for most uses. And finally, you can scooch up here in the choke style grip, or whatever you want to call this, for precision style work. Got a nice little fat finger choil for your middle finger right there, and then of course for your index right there. Big old wide bolster area, nice guard. I feel most secure when I'm down here though. This would be the tactical fighting martial grip, whatever you want to call it. Good for hacking and slashing. Love that blade style. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's sexy. It's curvy. So much belly to work with here. It's going to be great for slashing and slicing, and I love that satin finish. I'm normally a stonewash guy, but hot damn, this is just beautiful. They have sort of a two-tone finish going on here. You can see the striations are in a different pattern based on where the grind is. The flat looks like it's going horizontally, and then it's more vertical on the grind right there, as well as the swedge. Such a pleasure to carry it. It's just so cool. It's so comfortable. So much edge to work with. It's massive. 5.5 inches. I know Cold Steel sells their XL Espada, which has a 7.5 inch blade, but this is still a giant knife. So keep that in mind. It is waveable off of the pocket with that thumb plate right there. You have a decent amount to grip onto. That's going to be poking out there. It's pretty shiny right there. So this knife pretty much says, look at me. It screams it. It screams that with its shiny pocket clip right there too. It's not blackened. This knife is not hiding anything. It's supposed to be a beautiful, gorgeous knife that says, look at me. And that's exactly what it is. So cool looking. I love its shape. I love the almost mirror finish we have going on the bolster area there as well. You can see very fast deployment, even though it's not on ball bearings or anything. These guys go back well over a decade and they're still just as smooth as they were. So no issues there. Although it would be pretty cool for Cold Steel to start putting ball bearings on more of their knives, as those are becoming more standard now. Opens conventionally just fine, very smooth. You can wave it off of your pocket. Again, just keep in mind it is a little bit slippery, so you're gonna have to be careful. You're gonna have to practice with it if you want to do that. It might just fly out of your hands if they're sweaty or if you're not trained with it enough. And because it's so expensive and because we have a very brittle blade steel S35VN, I know it's the talk of the town. I know everybody loves the higher quality, more expensive blade steels that are more valuable, but when you make them that hard, they tend to shatter a lot easier as opposed to something like a West 10A, which would kind of just tend to roll over instead of just outright breaking or chipping. But that's a downside a lot of people don't typically talk about with the more expensive blade steels, but it's going to hold its edge for a much longer time. But actually, that kind of makes sense. I know they just went with the S35VN because it makes it more valuable and cooler, I suppose, but because we have a less grippy handle, I think it actually makes sense that we have a higher edge retention, less strong, but harder steel to accommodate it. If you want something really grippy, usually that means you'd be doing really hard, tough work where you could risk chipping your nice, expensive cutting edge right there. So to me, it actually makes sense that a knife that had a more grippy handle scale, the G10 Espada, has the softer blade steel. So the fact that they went with the higher end, more brittle, higher edge retaining blade steel on a slipperier handle scale actually makes total sense. So, hey, I'm not complaining. It is what it is. It's just very cool. It's very valuable. The edge will last a really long time, but it's expensive. You know, you're paying probably close to $300 for these things, depending on where you get them. Not a cheap knife. It's not the most expensive. It's not like Benchmade prices. Holy hell, glad we're not there. But if Benchmade made this knife, don't even get me started. I don't even want to know how much they would charge for it. Yeah, $250. It's still not cheap by any means. But again, we're getting a big old massive slab of S35VN. So already it's very valuable to begin with, and that accompanied with a very strong locking mechanism, that triad. If you're not familiar, it's an upgraded lockback style mechanism. Essentially, there's an integral stop pin, absorbs all of that positive force that would go on the cutting edge. The negative force that would go on the spine gets transferred to the L shape in the lock bar, which again gets transferred to the stop pin, and then it gets shocked back into. And then the tang of the blade absorbs that shock as well. It's a very ingenious, very simple locking mechanism. Works extremely well. It's one of the strongest in the world. Carries very well. It's big. It's a really big, wide, heavy knife. In fact, it's a little bit thicker than the G10 Espadas. It's a little bit more beveled around the edges as well, just a little bit. Nice and rounded. I would say certainly a lot more comfortable, but less grippy. That's just kind of the trade-off. Gorgeous knife. I just can't stop looking at it. It's just so beautiful. You want something stylish and sexy, something a little bit valuable, but also you want a tactical blade because it's so huge. Something like this is what you could go with. There's not many knives out there that fit both of those profiles. It's usually one or the other. You get something really grippy and black and tactical, or you get something that's like beautiful and shiny, but it's like small and it's like a liner lock or something and it's like $300. This is a really good compromise kind of in between the two. It's a massive fighting blade, I would say, but it's kind of catering more towards the looks style of things, the aesthetics. It's very comfortable. You have a lot of different grips you can hold this in. It's extremely strong due to that triad locking mechanism, the blade style, tried and true classic design, a lot of belly, a lot of reach. It's going to be good for piercing, good for slashing, good for slicing, all that good stuff. The blade steel is excellent, really hard. That edge is going to last a really long time. Very good rust resistance. It's got a beautiful finish on there. It carries very well despite not being entirely ambidextrous. I know everything is ambidextrous except for that. Don't know why, but oh well. I still would call it a tactical blade, but you're gonna have to practice with it just because we don't have much side traction going on here whatsoever. No jimping other than the thumb plate, which is going to wave off of your pocket very nice, but just be very careful. If you want something just for tactical use, but you like this overall profile, just step down to the G10 Large Espada. That's what I would say. But this certainly could still be a tactical blade, especially if it's already in your hand. We don't need knives to be super grippy. In fact, back in the day, people were using Bowie knives, killing each other with those things all the time. They didn't have any jimping or extra grippy G10 handle scales or anything. They didn't have any of that nonsense. They still worked just fine for them. That being said, you're going to need a little bit of extra practice if you want that to work for you as well in this context. But this is more about the cutouts and the shape of the handle. The ergonomics are what's going to really help lock you in there. Not so much the side traction itself. But as for waving the knife off of your pocket, snagging that thumb plate on the pocket, and not having this fly out of your hands or anything, just be careful. You're going to have to train with it. You can do it. It can be done. Just be careful, especially with a knife that's so expensive. So that's basically it. The Cold Steel Espada Large and S35VN kind of bridges the gap between being a beautiful, gorgeous show knife that's valuable and expensive and awesome, kind of like a piece of jewelry, fine art, but also a really devastating tactical blade, other than the fact that we don't really have much side traction here. That's basically it. That is the Cold Steel Espada Large S35VN. What do you think of this knife? Do you own it? Do you own any of the variants of the Espada series? Do you own the extra large version of this knife? That one I'd be interested in getting. Please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.